Good morning, and welcome back to the Morning Endurance Call. I'm Keith Erwood, and this is a free daily 15-minute or less leadership ritual for business owners, executives, and preparedness professionals who want to build stronger businesses, think more clearly under pressure, and lead with more clarity in uncertain times. Each weekday morning, we spend a few minutes talking about what it really takes to build stronger businesses, stronger leadership, and stronger preparedness in a world where disruption is part of reality. Today's topic is this: why recovery strategy should be built before crisis. This matters because one of the most common and costly assumptions in business is this: we'll figure it out when it happens. Sometimes people say it directly. More often, they do not say it out loud. But that is still the operating assumption. And while it may feel practical in the moment, it is rarely a strategy. It is uncertainty disguised as confidence. Because when disruption occurs, the organization does not suddenly become more clear, more coordinated, and more disciplined just because the stakes are higher. Usually, the opposite happens. Pressure rises, time compresses, information becomes incomplete, assumptions get challenged, communication gets harder, decision-making gets slower or emotional, and the cost of confusion goes up quickly. That is exactly why recovery strategy needs to be built before crisis. A recovery strategy is not just a technical plan, it is not just a document, and it is not just a set of hopeful ideas about getting back to normal. A real recovery strategy is a deliberately thought through approach for how businesses will restore critical capability after disruption. It answers questions like: what needs to come back first? What can wait? What resources are required? What dependencies matter most? What workarounds exist? What decisions must be made? Who has the authority to make them? What trade-offs are acceptable? What does success actually look like in the early stages of recovery? Those are not questions you want to be answering for the first time in the middle of an incident, because by then the environment is working against you. And that is the key point for today. Recovery is not strongest when it is invented under pressure. It is strongest when it has been considered, shaped, and challenged before pressure arrives. That is what strategy does. It gives structure to response. It gives clarity to recovery. It reduces avoidable delay. It supports better decisions when the organization is under stress. Without recovery strategy, businesses often fall into one of two traps. The first trap is improvisation without priorities. Everyone starts moving. People work hard. Conversations happen, and effort increases. But no one is fully aligned on what matters most, what should happen first, what can be deferred, or how success should be measured in the short term. So activity increases, but clarity does not. That creates friction, wasted effort, and preventable delay. The second trap is false confidence based on assumptions. Leadership assumes systems can be restored quickly. Teams assume access will be available. Operations assume vendors will respond. Everyone assumes someone else has already figured out the details. And then the disruption reveals that the assumptions were never truly validated. That is when recovery becomes slower, more chaotic, and more expensive than expected. This is why recovery strategy must be built before crisis. not because everything can be predicted, it cannot, but because enough can be thought through in advance to make the business less fragile when disruption happens. That is the goal. Preparedness is not about perfect foresight. It is about reducing uncertainty where you can, clarifying priorities where you must, and building capability before the test arrives. So let's make this more practical. What should a recovery strategy actually do? At a minimum, it should help the organization answer 5 important questions. First, what are we trying to recover first and why? Not everything is equally critical. Not every function needs immediate restoration. And not every system should be first in line. A recovery strategy should reflect business priorities, not just technical possibilities. Second, what dependencies must be in place for recovery to work? This is where many organizations get surprised. A system may be restorable in theory, but not usable in practice if identity access is broken, a vendor is unavailable, a network dependency is missing, data is stale, or a critical person cannot be reached. Recovery depends on more than the thing being recovered. Third, what recovery options do we really have? Can we fail over? Can we work manually? Can we use an alternate process? Can we shift workload? Can we temporarily reduce service scope? Can we operate in a degraded but acceptable state? These are strategic questions, not just technical ones. Fourth, who decides what happens when trade-offs are required? Because trade-offs always come. Do we restore one function before another? Do we serve one customer segment first? Do we delay one business process to accelerate another? Do we accept reduced capability temporarily? If that authority is unclear, recovery slows. And fifth, what must already be true for this strategy to work? That includes things like current runbooks, validated contacts, known responsibilities, access readiness, working communication paths, supporting vendors, tested assumptions, and clear business priorities. If those foundations are weak, the strategy is weaker than it looks. This is one of the reasons I often say that recovery strategy sits at the intersection of leadership, operations, and reality. It is not enough to want recovery. The business has to be structurally ready to support it. And this connects directly to endurance. Because endurance in business is the ability to continue operating, make sound decisions, recover intelligently, and keep moving forward under pressure over time. Recovery strategy supports endurance because it helps the organization recover intelligently, not just urgently. That is an important distinction. Urgency matters in crisis, but urgency without structure can create expensive mistakes. Intelligent recovery means the organization understands what matters most, what order makes sense, what capabilities are required, what trade-offs are acceptable, and how to move forward without creating more damage in the process. That is what strategy contributes. Now, I want to make an important point here for leaders. Recovery strategy is not only for major disasters. It matters for small disruptions too, such as vendor issues, a system outage, a building problem, a staffing disruption, communications failure, a cyber incident, or process breakdown. In all of these situations, the organization benefits when people already understand the path forward better than they would have otherwise. That is why strategy should not be confused with complexity. A recovery strategy does not need to be a 100-page document to be useful. It needs to be usable. It needs to be connected to business priorities. It also needs to reflect reality. It needs to support decision making under pressure. That is the real standard. So here's a practical way to think about it. If a disruption hit today, could your leadership team answer these questions clearly? What matters most right now? What comes back first? What can wait? What dependencies could slow us down? What workarounds are available? Who decides when priorities conflict? And what assumptions are we relying on? How do we know whether recovery is actually working? If those answers are unclear, then your recovery strategy may not yet be strong enough. And that is not a criticism, it is an opportunity. Because once those gaps become visible, the organization can strengthen them. That is what preparedness work should do. It should reveal where clarity is missing before the pressure does. That is also why testing matters. A recovery strategy that has never been challenged may still be mostly theoretical. A strategy becomes more credible when it has been discussed, reviewed, exercised, and refined. That is how confidence becomes earned rather than assumed. So here's today's leadership takeaway. Recovery strategy should not begin during the crisis. It should be built before the crisis so the business can recover with more clarity, less chaos, and with stronger decisions. That is the point. And here's today's question for you. If a critical disruption happened today, would your organization know what to recover first, how to do it, and who would make the key decisions? That question reveals a lot, because when strategy is unclear before the event, confusion becomes much more likely during the event. Thank you for joining me today on the Morning Endurance Call. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, join the free endurance community at members.erwoodgroup.com, and the link is below. That is where I'm sharing additional resources, tools, live learning, and ongoing conversation for business owners, executives, and practitioners who want to build stronger businesses through preparedness, leadership, and endurance. Remember, the link is in the description below. Tomorrow, we'll talk about why crisis leadership starts before the crisis. Because the way leaders perform under pressure is shaped long before the incident begins. Until then, think clearly, prepare deliberately, and lead with endurance. Thank you, and bye now.